Hey y'all, welcome back for another video. If you're new here, my name's Mark and I typically talk about photography, camera gear, travel, and pretty much whatever else I feel like. But today is the beginning of a new series called Why I Bought. What's different about this series from some other YouTube channels that you might watch is everything that I'm gonna talk about in this series, I actually paid for with my own money. These are not sponsored videos. Nobody sent me this gear. It was my hard-earned cash that paid for this gear. So let's start with the first one. So this is the Sigma 20mm 1.4 art lens. It's been out since 2015 and it was initially designed as an astrophotography lens. And I am not an astrophotographer. I focus primarily on event and portrait work. And for me, one of the things that is most challenging with event work is lighting. With my style of photography, I like to capture the atmosphere and the ambiance of the space that I'm in and what is happening. I view myself more as a photojournalist or documentary photographer. So when it comes to event work, manipulating the light with strobes and things like that is not something that I typically like to do. So that presents some challenges. I like choosing lenses that give me the widest aperture that I can get so that I can shoot basically in the dark. Now, a lot of that will depend on the camera body and the sensor size of the camera that you're shooting on, but there is a major difference between f1.4 and everything in between to f2.8 that you just won't get if you show up with the standard 16 to 35 or 15 to 35. And while those lenses are great for giving you a little bit more range and will work in almost every single situation, I choose this lens almost more than, let's be honest, this is my favorite lens, and I choose it more than any other lens in my kit for most shooting situations. When I look through my Lightroom library and I sort by lens, there are more photos out of this lens than any other lens in Lightroom. One thing to note is that comparatively, it is on the heavier side, especially the Canon version of this lens. Now, if you don't shoot Canon, that's fine. It comes in all of the other mounts as well. You can check out links in the description for the camera that you shoot with. Being 20mm is gonna give you a super wide field of view. It's certainly not a fisheye, but it really widens things up. And from what I can tell, there's not a huge amount of lens distortion in that widening process. That's something that you get a lot with fisheye lenses where it just bows the edges of everything. I don't really experience that with this lens too often. Typically with wide lenses, you don't get too much depth of field. One thing that I like about this Sigma is that at that 1.4 and everything up to about 2.8, you can get some great depth of field out of this lens depending on how close your subject is to, the front of the element. I don't just use this lens for photography, I've actually used it quite a bit on this YouTube channel as my main camera lens. Now, while I'm not shooting this video on this lens, I am using a 20mm focal length. If this lens is outside of your budget, I've left a link to this lens down below. From my experience, this lens has been pretty durable too. This pink tape isn't just for aesthetics. I actually dropped this lens from about waist height right onto a concrete floor. So this tape was kind of put in place to provide a little bit of reinforcement to the super glued, reapplied lens hood that's on here. This lens hood is not removable because it's protecting the front element of this lens, which is very concave, much like a fisheye lens would be. Sigma has a few of these lenses in their lineup that have this concave and built-on tulip, which doesn't really bother me. It does add a little bit more bulk to it, but it's not like it's really adding too much more weight. Just takes up a little bit more room in your camera bag. The weight does have some heft. So if you like really super duper light lenses, this might not be the one for you. Again, this lens might be the one for you. But for me, I'm used to carrying around a 70 to 200 and Canon's 28 to 70 weighs like 400 pounds. So I feel like I'm getting used to, carrying some big lenses. But yeah, I highly recommend this lens. I think it's definitely worth a closer look. You might even try renting this lens to check out if it's gonna work for you, or utilize any of the excellent return policies that you can find at the links below. I've left links down below to this lens and the others in my kit, which I will be making more of these videos about. So, why I bought the Sigma 20mm 1.4 art lens. If you have another lens that goes down to about 1.4 that you really love, let me know about it down below in the comments.